less than 10% of the people I see are going to be there for life. 90% are getting out. They're returning to the community. So the challenges are, A, will God forgive them? I tell them yes. Do they change? They do change. Most of them change. The people that I see, in America, there's something called recidivism. The prison system is failing. Over 50% of the people within 5 years recommit the same crime and go back in. The people that I see and that I mentor and come out and I stick with for the rest of their life, less than 1% go back.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have an incredible guest. His name is Rabbi Binyomin Scheiman. He is the rabbi of Chabad of Free and Niles, and he is also a director of the Hinza Institute, which is a prison outreach organization. And he also has the unique distinction of being the longest serving shliach in the state of Illinois. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Rabbi Scheiman.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Happy Adar.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start a little bit with your background, a little about your life. Who were your mentors? How did you come to Chabad?
Okay, well, from 0 through almost 12 years old, I did not see the Rebbe. My parents are children of immigrants that came in the early 1900s. My mother's parents are from Poland. My father's from Hungary. My mother and father are both New York born. I think my mother, though, is the only New York American born in her family. And she's the baby of her family. I never had grandparents. I was born, the last grandparent was the man I'm named after, Binyomin Ber. He passed away just a few months before I was born. He's actually buried not far from the Rebbe. He's married in the same cemetery. And my parents, my mother was traditional, kosher. They didn't keep Shabbos strictly. And when I was a little boy, around 5, my oldest sister, I have a brother who's 6 years older than me, and a sister 9 years older than me. Thank God they're both living. They're both well. And my sister was 14. She got inspired by somebody, I think Rabbi Lamb in New York. And she told my parents, it's time to get us enrolled in Jewish school, and it's time to move out of this neighborhood. They had just bought a home in Belrose, Queens. They did sell the house, and they never owned a house the rest of their life. They rented, and the money they used to pay for, they were never paying tuitions before. So they had to pay 3 tuitions, and we moved to Brighton Beach.
That was such a sacrifice for your parents.
Yes, yeah. That's, I think, one of a special merit why they have a child and grandchildren that are shluchim, because of that self-sacrifice for Jewish education. So there was a small local yeshiva called the Yeshiva of Brighton Beach, and I never went to public school. I started at 5.5 years old. I've been in Hebrew school my whole life. And in the 7th grade, the yeshiva, I guess it always struggled financially, which just like all schools today, it still are. And the enrollment seemed to be really, I had like 6-7 kids in my class each year. It wasn't a big school. And when I was in 7th grade, 4 Lubavitcher teachers came into the school. Rabbi Shmuel Butman was one of the teachers, Rabbi Sunz, Rabbi Bronstein, and then one of my mentors, Rabbi David Rimler, who now owns the Judaica World Store, but for many years an educator in Lubavitcher Yeshiva. He taught for 2 years in Yeshiva Brighton, 7th grade. He taught both 7th and 8th grade. I had him 2 years. And so when I was in 7th grade, he invited myself and another boy, Abi Golgreb. He's now a gentleman who lives in Flatbush. He himself has a son who is on Shlichus in England. So we were invited to come with him to Crown Heights for Shabbos, Yud Shvat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time. So that was, I'm saying, chapter 59. It means 58 years ago. This
Wow.
Yud Shvat was the first time when I was a week away from being 12. I was only 11 years old. And we were there for Shabbos. We were it was Yud Aleph Shvat. We were by a Shabbos for Brengen. And that summer, of course, he got me involved in Camp Gan Israel in Parksville. It was actually before Parksville. I went the first year after Swan Lake. It was in a place for 1 year called Livingston Manor. And then that was only 1 year. Then it's in the present location where it is now. So another mentor of mine is Rabbi Avremel Shem Tov because Gan Yisrael was the first Lubavitch institution I was in as a boy. And you didn't mention it in the intro, but originally I still am like the executive director of Gan Yisrael in Chicago, but my son really does that more full time. But I'm a camp guy through and through. So then the next step was in the next grade, where do I go for high school? And at that time, there were a lot of competing schools all around the country. Obviously, not as many as today, but there were people looking for little Jewish souls to come into their school. And Rabbi Rimla was directing me towards Lubavitch Yeshiva, which was at Bedford and Dean. And I started the first year when it moved to Ocean Parkway.
How did your parents react to your becoming like religious and becoming a Lubavitcher?
Well, it was so gradual. Number one, I was the baby of the family when they went full in. So, I was just going along with the family.
So it's understandable that you went to Lubavitch, to Chabad yeshivas, and so you ended up being a shliach. But how in the world did you end up in the prison chaplaincy as starting and founding the Hindu Institute? How did that happen?
Well, so again, the first part from 13 to 23, everything went gradually. I would say until I was 18, I was a yeshiva Brighton boy learning in Lubavitch Yeshiva. Then I had a yechidus with the Rebbe. My parents wanted me to go to college. And I said, I was already going every year on my birthday to see the Rebbe for a private audience. So I said, I have to ask the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, you should follow the Seder of Tomchei Temimim, of Lubavitch Yeshiva. So I got a clear answer, and I went to Morristown. I would say Morristown is where things got more full-blown and more serious, where now I was a Lubavitcher Bacha. I wasn't just a Brighton Beach boy anymore. And so from 18 till I got married, the whole energy amongst young students in the yeshiva at that time was, we need to go on shlichus. You have to, if you are by the kinnis, and when Rabbi Kartlarski of blessed memory, and now his son, when they make the roll call, if they call up who was out in the 30s, not too many people stand up. So at that time, there were not many shluchim around, and there was a big push. I remember the Tishrei, the holiday time, right before I got married. I got engaged right before Rosh Hashanah that year in 1979. And there was a lot of people for bringing, a lot of shluchim for bringing. It's really important. It was like hammered home every night. And I went to Rabbi Kolarski's office. There was not a shluchim office yet. And I said, I want to go on shlichus. And I got all type of different possibilities. And Rabbi Moskowitz of blessed memory from Chicago was one of my choices. And me and my first wife at the time, we chose to go to Chicago. We wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave us a blessing. And so I got married in.
But you didn't go to Chicago for prison. You went to Chicago to be a rabbi.
Rabbi Moskowitz was opening up the cheder that's in Chicago now. They wanted a teacher. So my wife, Hindi, at the time, she is an excellent preschool teacher. So she went there to be the teacher in the cheder. And I went to do camp. Rabbi Moskowitz was running the camp, and I was also going to be Rabbi Moskowitz's right-hand man. Matzah, right away when we came in, there was the matzah ball contest, Purim packages, whatever happens in a Chabad house, it was just me and Rabbi Moskowitz. So prison had nothing to do with anything. And I asked Rabbi Moskowitz, what should I do, besides the getting Purim and Lag BaOmer and Pesach and camp? What else should I do? He said, whatever you do, it shouldn't cost money. It's going to be hard enough for me to raise your salary. Don't do costly things. So I had never been in a prison in my life, but when I was sitting in the office, I got there 2 weeks before Purim that year. And so it's only 6 weeks before Pesach. So it must have been 2 or 3 weeks in, somebody called from Crown Heights. His name was Rifkin. Yes, he's a businessman in Crown Heights. He had wallpaper type of company. And he said, I have a colleague in Chicago called Mr. P.G. Berland. He has a bunch of stores. And unfortunately, he has a son who with another man are sitting in Joliet prison. Can you make sure they get provisions for Pesach? So I didn't know what to do. Rabbi Moskowitz says, well, this is one of the things you'll have to do. So I called the prison. I found out the chaplain. I didn't visit the prison. I just dropped off the provisions. And it seems that within the first 12 or 18 months I was there were different families that came around. There were some women in the B'nai B'rith women's division that had some of their mothers had children in prison. So they asked me to get involved. I started visiting a 16-year-old boy who was just in juvenile. And then there was another group called the Jewish Prisoners Assistance Foundation. That's what we used to call HINDA before we changed the name to honor my first wife. So this was a group of ex-offenders who started this program, and they were looking for a rabbi. So they again reached out to Chabad. So I started getting involved with them. And little by little, I went in to make some visits, and something clicked by me. Something clicked. And I made a firm resolution. There are 30 prisons. I'm only going to 2 of them. There's 30 places like this in the state, and there's Jews probably in each one. I would like to see all of them. I would like to make sure none of them are forgotten about, especially since the middle 70s, by many holidays, the Rebbe always says, don't forget the people in prison. And it's sort of, I think it has to do with the fact that I'm a Kohen. And back in the day, one of the jobs of the Kohen was to visit people who were expelled from the community. They had to leave the community. They had the leprosy or whatever, and the Kohen had to be the one to pronounce them to leave, but he also had to be the one to visit them and guide them and bring them back into the community eventually. So I think it must be in the Kohen gene that, and when Mashiach comes, I don't know, besides working in the Beis HaMikdash, I'm sure I'm still going to be involved in the work I'm doing, reaching out to people that are on the outskirts and bringing them back.
But we won't have prisons then. We won't have prisons.
They didn't have
then,
prisons,
right?
no. And the Rebbe hammered, that point is hammered home, talk after talk after talk by the Rebbe, that is not one of the punishments in the Torah. It's not humane. And so
what was it like to walk into a prison the first time? Do you remember that? Like what it felt like? I mean, this goes back probably many, many years.
So to me, I felt this is a mission. The administrations are not user friendly. They didn't want anybody from the outside coming in. I asked, can I get a list of all the Jews in the state of Illinois? And the head chaplain said, we can't give that to you. If we give it to you, we have to give it to the Moonies. We have to give it to every cult member. I said, no, but I'm a rabbi. It doesn't matter. And we actually had to have politicians. It was so, to me, going into a prison, I wasn't intimidated by the big gates and by the walls. It was more of the Rebbe wants us to get in here. And we went to politicians. We had meetings.
It sounds like a lot of red tape just to get in.
A lot of red tape. And we had meetings with the governor's office, me and Rabbi Moskowitz, and we pushed through that. They said, just like this priest, just like there's other Protestant ministers, a rabbi should be able to go. And I started off as a volunteer. They gave the list. Present day, I am, we're contractors with the state.
Interesting.
And so it's the excitement of getting in and
So
getting into each place.
you came a far way from being not let in to now be a contractor for the state.
Correct. And now I have three of my sons in Illinois have come back to work. My first wife, of blessed memory, when about 12 or 13 years ago, when she was nearing the end of her life, she said, "What's going to be with our sons?" They were all in Crown Heights. They were in Colo. They said, "Nobody's going to hire a guy with the last name of Scheiman. Why don't you get them a trade? Why don't you have them learn computers?" I said, "No, the Rebbe wants shluchim." I said, "Well, then you got to be a big boy. Until now, you were getting a salary from Rabbi Moskowitz, and then you took care of yourself. You've got to now go out and hire them." And how am I going to do that? He said, "You better do it. Put your money where your mouth is." So thank God my oldest son is the director of the camp, and I have two other sons. One lives actually 300 miles away. Illinois is a big state, and in order for me to have time for fundraising, and I at one time I was going 7 to 9 days a month to the 30 prisons up and down the state. Sometimes I would have to sleep out 2 or 3 nights because I'm on these drives that are 6-7 hours one way away from Chicago.
Wow.
And sometimes to see one man. So one of my sons moved to Southern Illinois, and
so that he can take care of the prisons there.
Right. There's a Southern Illinois University, deep south, where the Roars funded him for that, and he also visits the prisons in those areas. And then I have another son who is local up by me, who goes to the local Cook County jail every week, and there's a local federal prison in Chicago. And then he also is the one who studies with men when they get out. So on the reentry.
So I just want to tell our readers that the way that I got to you, Rabbi Scheiman, was through your son, who was listening to an interview that we did with Dr. Price, who was in prison, and he was feeling very inspired. Your son was feeling very inspired by Dr. Price's story, how he completely turned around and became converted to Judaism and turned his entire life completely upside down. For those who are watching, if you want to look at that past interview, it was a very, very inspirational one. But it was through him that we got to you right now, actually, because he watched the interview. So that's interesting, and he felt inspired by it, by the work that had happened.
Yes, and my sons also. What do people do when they turn 18? You want to get a car, you want to be able to drive. My kids knew the earliest you could come into volunteer into a prison is 18 years old. So when they turned 18, I would take them on my pre-Pesach trip, where I would deliver 8 days worth of Pesach food to 150 people up and down the state. It's a whole week driving, and we would have father-son time at 18, and then they all really got into it. And plus,
what was it like for them to go into a prison? Like you said, for you, it was no big deal going. It was more the red tape that
so I say I have my sons I have 4 sons, Kanai Nahara, and so far, maybe I'll get more, but they have different personalities. So my personality is more like a surgeon or a doctor who doesn't get rattled by the tales that I hear from the people of what they've done or the conditions they're in. I'm able to take it all in and stay calm and cerebral and just professional and do what has to be done. So I have some sons that are like that, and I have other sons who have deeper empathy, and they get very disturbed by a lot of these things. You bring these things home. It's not hard, it's very hard to absorb. I have volunteers that come in that can't go back for a month because what they saw and what they heard. I have this person.
Because of the crimes that they hear from the people, or the compassion that they have.
It's the way they're treated. It's the crimes that there's Aleph sends out students every year to visit in the summertime. So when if they come to Illinois, I sit down with them and I give them, a person by person, how to go to each prison. But I always tell them, please do me one favor. until you get back home, don't look up on the internet anything about that person.
Oh, wow. Because
Wait
it
till
might.
you leave, and
Why?
because
Why is
we're
that?
there not to judge anybody.
Mm. Well, how is it that you can have compassion for the people there, but still hold, space for the fact that they committed terrible harms to other people? Like, how do you hold the two together?
I believe that this is, again, it goes back to my genetic Kohen gene,
Yeah.
Aharona Kohen. Aaron the high priest loved everybody, and he was
Mm,
able to do that. Uh, and I pride myself, even not in the prison work, but in my shul or in the bigger Chabad community or in the bigger, I am able to sit with people with differing opinions, different points of view, and I'm able to blend. I'm a shliach without borders. I could go
mhm,
into any environment, people with different ideas. So taking that a step further, I imagine myself, um, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, many Sundays gave out dollars to
mm,
hundreds and thousands of people. I'm sure all those people had done many, many different things. And
mhm,
I can't recall watching those lines, the Rebbe getting a sour face or looking in.
mm,
The Rebbe saw love. He saw the diamond, like he told the lady he was standing hours. How do you do that? When you count diamonds, you don't get tired. So I adapt that. I'm getting that from the Rebbe, that I am visiting diamonds. I am
mm,
visiting I'm visiting the botanic gardens, the
mm.
late bloomers. They haven't bloomed yet, but I'm in the
Wow.
botanic gardens. I'm in the gem store, and I'm seeing beautiful people. A person shouldn't be defined by labeled by a crime. We
Mhm,
we are humans. We are
mm,
Jews. We don't even want to use Reform, Orthodox, Conservative. The Rebbe said a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, so we don't put other labels on either. He's not this crime or that crime or that crime. It's a good human, a good Jew who did certain activities, and now there is redemption. Now you can make a fresh start. Now you could have a second chance.
Do you
You don't
think
have to.
everyone deserves a second chance? Do you think there's no crime that does not deserve a second chance? Does everyone deserve a second chance?
A to put it, most of the people I see, like I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, Hanukkah time, me and my son went to Cook County Joe. We saw 10 Jews. 10 out of 10 had a mental health problem.
Mhm.
We see a lot, and there's a very
Is that
small,
reflective of a big percentage
it's
of the
a, yes,
prison population?
Sheriff Tom Dart of Cook County Jail said Cook County Jail is the largest mental health facility in America.
Mhm,
More than between 30 and 40% of the people there are mentally ill, and
mhm,
they need medicine, they need to be treated. Then there are people with drug addiction issues, which also need to be treated.
mhm,
The crimes that you may be referring to, or people think about the worst thing, there are people that will never see the street to get that second chance on the street. Still, when I go in there, I could treat them like a human. They could do
mhm,
teshuvah. They could repent. Will God ever forgive me? A lot of them, well, can God forgive me for what I did?
mhm,
There's people that are crying. They did terrible things. I don't want to mention what they are. And
mhm.
can we be forgiven?
So you're
And
not talking about like giving them freedom to go out and, onto the street and perhaps redo some of the crimes, but you're talking about when they're in prison to feel that humanity,
right,
to
so
give them the
there's
dignity.
there, and that's a small margin. Less than 10% of the people I see are going to be there for life.
Mhm,
90% are getting out. They're returning to the community. So the challenges are, A, will God forgive them? I tell them yes. Do
mhm,
they change? They do change. Uh, most of them change. The people that I see in America, there's something called recidivism. The
mhm.
prison system is failing. Over 50% of the people within 5 years recommit the same crime and go
Right.
back in. The people that I see and that I mentor and come out and I stick with for the rest of their life, less than 1% go back.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. So
It is incredible.
what is it that you do with them? Like, how do you teach them? How do you educate them so that they're not gonna go back?
So, A, it goes back to what you said. Can they be forgiven? So the answer is unequivocally, 100%. And they community then is another challenge. Even though I know the Torah says they're forgiven, you know the Torah says, God knows they're forgiven, the rest of the community holds ex felonies and their crimes against them. They're doing a second sentence when they get released. So we have to educate. I go to shuls all over Chicago to speak about giving people fresh starts and second chances. They're humans. But guess what? The hardest nut to crack is many of the men and women, they can never forgive themselves.
Wow. So you think
God
that
has
once,
forgiven them, the
right,
community accepts them, and then I
they
still have
don't
to
forgive
counsel them.
themselves.
Right. I
Do
have a
you think
man.
that that's why people go back to crime? Because they don't forgive themselves? Because they look at themselves in that light as a criminal, as someone who can never be better?
Well, it certainly is one of the reasons. But again, the people I'm seeing are not going back.
Right.
But it takes constant. That's why I have to stay in touch with them. We don't give up on them. I just I'm a Cohen, so I did a Zoom service for a man we just had a bury this week. I was seeing him for 24 years. He was 74. But
Wow.
we have to stick with them forever. I have a man, he's over 60 now. I started seeing him when he was 16. And he wasn't in there. He ended up going to Morristown. He became a full Baal Tshuva. He has a son that's on
Wow.
Shlichus somewhere now. I can't identify anything, obviously. But as early as 5 years ago, he said he still wakes up with sweats like somebody's going to get him. And he said he didn't forgive himself. And I asked him, go back to the Rebbe, go back to the Ohel. And he went in and he cried his heart out. And he said it was like a stone was lifted from him finally. But he was living with this for decades. He still hadn't forgiven himself. So it's hard work, and we make sure to. And this makes me really. If you think that I look burnt out, I don't.
No, you don't at all.
I want to keep doing this because
How do you do it without being burnt out? Like how is it that you still have that inspiration and that fire?
because I think this is what we are taught in Hasidic philosophy, that God wants a dwelling place in the very lowest areas, in the darkest spots. And I can't think of something that fulfills that more than jumping in my car in the morning, driving to a remote location 6 hours away, seeing a man in a super maximum security prison, which is really dark because he did the darkest of dark crimes, and then going to that man and putting on film with him and telling him a joke and seeing him smile. I can't think of anything that fulfills a dira patachtonim, a dwelling place, bringing God. And that's what we live for. How could you get burnt out when you're fulfilling the work? It's like amazing.
That's incredible. I'm awed by the fact that you stayed in touch with this person for so many years, for decades. That's like unbelievable.
Yes, I have men. I have dozens of men like that, and I have non-Jews also, because inside the prison system, 30% of the people we see are not Jewish. Some are adopted, some are married to a Jewish woman, some just want to seek, and you're allowed to declare any religion you want. We're the contractors to anybody who identifies. So I have non-Jewish people, and I know Dr. Price was the person you interviewed.
Yes.
So I've been going to prison 45 years, and never has anybody converted that I've met that was non-Jewish, but they do follow. I have one man who's opened up a institute for to teach the 7 laws of Noah to people.
Wow.
And
That's incredible. Why did he do that? Why was he motivated to do that? Because you told him about that?
Because I explained to him there's the 7 laws of Noah. He doesn't have to become Jewish, and he bought into it, and that's what he's been doing. I'm in touch with him for 30 or 40 years now.
Is
He's going
that
to
part?
be what?
Is that part of your job that you're contracted to do, or this is just what you do?
Our contract is to visit anybody who says they're Jewish. So me and my son.
I'm saying even after they leave prison.
Oh no, I do it. We are committed. Anybody who's ever seen me, in the Hindu Institute, we help all our Jewish and non-Jewish clients. I
Mhm.
have black men and Spanish men who call me their father on the street. And I'm their
Wow.
father figure. I know the boys from the Chicago Masifta, they go out on the trains, they go all over, and sometimes they meet a black man who says, "Oh, do you know Rabbi Scheiman? I saw him in
Mhm.
prison." And he's nice to the boys. He says, "He was so kind, so I'm going to be nice to you guys." So,
Wow. Can you give us some numbers, like how many Jews are in prison in the Illinois area, or how many prisons there are that you're dealing with?
yes, I could give you rough numbers. Each year, we have been, since I started, the numbers are not growing, thank God, but anywhere from 100 to 150 individuals are people that we get food for
Mm.
Pesach.
Oh.
And although there's a certain amount that are not Jewish, like I just told you, I do believe, though, and I don't, again, there's no study on this, but I believe for every two Jews that I see, there's a third Jew somewhere in that institution who's too scared and
Mhm.
petrified to identify as a Jew because it could be, it could be scary in prison.
Are
So
you seeing
I,
are you seeing a greater sense of anti-Semitism over the years? An increase?
I am not seeing a greater amount. I especially since October 7th have been asking the men if they see a greater increase, and they say they have not. They're not.
Mhm.
Now, there is, to be sure, there is anti Semitism in the prison. And me and
Mhm.
my sons, as Jewish chaplains, we do, experience. We could tell people we have our friends and we have those that we have to be wary of. We know
Mhm.
that. But it's not different than the street. It's not
Are you
worse inside the prison.
are you
It's
scared when you go in? Are you ever scared as
I
as
am
a rabbi
never,
going in?
thank God I am never scared. I never met a man that scared me. And I never actually met a man, Jewish or non Jewish, who, no matter what they've committed, how I haven't been able to see inside of them and their soul and see the goodness in them.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
everybody's a mixture of, I mean, the people that are totally, totally, totally evil are so rare. Uh, I bet you a complete evil person is even more rare than a complete tzaddik.
Mhm. Wow.
I don't think too many people like that in his. We know the people in history
I
we
is
could
it
name.
is it because you're a Cohen who looks at people in that way, in that light, or is this real reality, objective reality?
I actually find the good in them.
You find the good,
I
right?
find the good in them. I'm not imagining it,
Right.
and and people respond um, uh, back. Once
Right.
I uncover that good, they
Mhm.
reflect that back. They start believing that they're good. Could you imagine, since you're a little boy, every nanny and every principal and every preschool teacher in kindergarten and first grade, you're always in the principal's office. Then you get
Mhm.
into juvenile trouble. Then you get into adult trouble, and nobody's saying anything good about you. Whereas, if somebody, and
This
all of a
is
sudden Jew, this
right.
rabbi pops up and says, "Hey, you're good," and
Wow.
and
This
and
is the
and
first time
and
they're hearing that.
it's the first time they're hearing it, and when they hear it, they love hearing it, and they start being better, and they start changing their lives. I mean, these people are not going out and committing crimes. I am bringing public safety through my work. I am saving the federal and state and county government untold millions of dollars by keeping people out of prison, and
Absolutely.
I'm spending a fraction of that. Uh, we have caseworkers actually. The widow that I got remarried to, I was a widower for 5 years. Now I'm remarried. She was in Canada and she actually worked for the RMCP, the Royal Mounted Canadian
Royal
Police,
Canadian,
which is
right,
like the
mounted
FBI
police.
in
Mhm.
equivalent. And so she went from cops to robbers, and now she is my education. She was a designer of courses. She trained the police. So she does
Mm.
these trainings now. We have, since COVID, we went to Zoom, and we have people. She runs courses 12 months a year. We have 20 to 50 people participating, and she does addiction. Right now, she has addiction class. She's going to have a legal class. She has these educational, and now we've hired a team of psychologists and caseworkers. We find them housing. We find people jobs. And then we, try to again fit people into the community. Now, you asked about some people, they're on the street. We are now, every holiday, whether it's Purim, Passover, Hanukkah, we make in our house, or Rosh Hashanah also, we make exclusive uh, um, services for men and women that are not welcome to go into any synagogues. And,
Mm.
and it might be for very good reasons. We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to force synagogues, but these people could still hear the Megillah. They could still light Hanukkah candles. They could still hear the shofar. So in our house, we have 20 or 30 individuals like this come by every holiday because they can't yet. Again, you're right. It's a very sensitive subject. The synagogue doesn't want certain people to be present at certain times when there's families and children around. So we just make a separate service for them. And we
Mm-hmm.
understand it. We're peaceful with everybody.
Right. Wow.
We understand the side of a mother and a child who are scared. We don't want certain
Right.
people hanging around. So we respect that. But we
I'm one.
also give the opportunity.
I'm wondering how prison life affects these people's families. I mean, that must be the hardest part of it. How were they affected by it? And
Well,
are you involved with them?
the statistics tell us that there's 8 to 10 individuals that are affected by the incarceration who are not criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Mothers, siblings, brothers, fathers, grandparents, wives. And so actually one of the other major things my wife does is she runs a support group for the mothers and wives every week. And
Mm-hmm.
these women are in great pain. Number one, they're sometimes shunned by congregations because
Right.
everybody thinks, oh, you knew everything and you're part of it, and they're not. And
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the shame. Their kids sometimes can't join. Some of them just don't even want to come out. Some of them have to relocate. It's very hard on the wives and the mothers, and very rarely do these marriages end up hanging together. There's a lot of, which for good reason, but we still support them when they get their divorces. We help the wife and the man arrange their lives. And then there's the
Wow.
children. The children usually need therapy because
Right.
they're hearing stuff from other kids in school. They're getting bullied
Right.
because of it. And so we have a children's program.
So here they have
This
to go through the pain of the parent doing this crime, and then they're going through
correct.
another pain of being punished for themselves for being a child of this.
Correct. And we have my wife just made a bas mitzvah for one of these girls. And she wanted it very private, just family, because, her parents, each one of them addiction issues. Both of the parents were in prison, and she's in a school with a bunch of rich kids, and you can imagine how she feels. So we
Sure.
befriended her, and we made sure she had a beautiful bas mitzvah, and give her that courage to, go on with life. And again, they need therapy.
Right.
They're going through a lot of pain.
So you're talking with so much light and inspiration and so much strength. I'm wondering if you ever feel like when someone goes back to the crimes that they do, how would you feel about that? Or when someone goes back to the addictions or goes back to what's pulling them down, how do you feel then?
So that is a very interesting question because most of the people, like I said, they don't go back. But again, those are the people who choose to stay in touch with us. People with mental health and addiction issues, they get out, they don't even stay in touch. And it's very hard to watch. You know, they just, they harm themselves. I think nobody's converted from being non-Jewish to Judaism, but I've had, unfortunately, 10 to 20 people OD due to their addiction.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's another point. What do you do with someone? You saw
Right.
them, you tried to help them, and then all of a sudden, just like that, they're found, and you have to deal with the family and a funeral. That's very heartbreaking. It's very hard.
How does that not get you down? How does that not affect the work that you're doing?
Well, I'll give you an example. What did I say about the man who I had to be at the burial this week? What am I going to say about a man who He went in at 50. He had a prison sentence. He had to serve 100 years. He would have to live till 150 to get out. So let's
Wow.
not mention any of his crimes. What am I supposed to say at the funeral? He number one, he
It's a
was
good
actually
question. Yeah.
he was murdered.
Oh, he
He
was
was
murdered.
murdered in the
He was
prison.
murdered in prison. Wow.
There's an investigation now. There were 3 other people stabbed. So I don't know. I said at the funeral, I do not know if he was killed because he was Jewish, because they're investigating. But
Mhm.
if they made a pie chart, I bet you would be a portion of that was because he was Jewish. But all
Mhm.
I could say is I've seen the man for 24 years. He did a Passover save for 24 years straight. He did Hanukkah menorah. He did Rosh Hashanah. He heard the shofar. He did everything. He identified it as Jewish. He had Shema memorized, and we put on tefillin with him every month. He put on tefillin hundreds of times. And so I would say that since part of the reason he was murdered because he was Jewish,
Mhm.
I said he's a kadosh. He is a
Mhm.
martyr, and he goes
Mhm.
straight to heaven. And he did
Mhm.
his term in hell for 24 years. He did
Mhm.
it while he was living. That was his
Mhm.
term. If he has, he's all cleaned up and he went straight to heaven. So I do my best with all the people that OD or how much pain they were in, how hard it was for them, and now certainly they've gone to a better place. So yeah, it is very hard.
Mhm.
But again, I'm built in such a way to uh,
Mhm.
I'm able to adapt. And when somebody goes back in, they feel some of them don't want to see me because they know I am not going to judge them. I'm not
Right.
going to scream at them. They're just so ashamed that they went back in.
That they
Sometimes they
let
feel
you down.
they have a harder time than I do.
Wow. Because they let you down and they know that you care.
Right. I always tell them, no matter what happens in life, if you're in the gutter and you're lying on the street, I'll lie right next to you. If you turn your face, you'll find me lying right next to you. And whatever gutter you're in or whatever prison you're in, I'm going to go down wherever you go. I'm going to be there with you, and you don't have to worry. There'll always be somebody there with you.
Wow. Were you always such a compassionate individual?
Actually, no. My actions were always compassionate. But myself growing up, something must have happened in my late teens, 20s, where I emotionally shut down and did the action of doing the compassionate acts and was able to understand it, but there was no emotion at all. And it was
Mm.
only after I became a widower and then I
Mhm.
had to get remarried. I went through a lot of inner work myself to work on myself that I need to open up my emotions again. I need to let the emotion come out. I need the compassion to actually come out. And so it's only in the last decade that I've opened up my heart and different people close to me, my children included, they do say I'm not the same man I was. I'm a better man.
Wow. What was it was it sudden that when your wife passed away?
No, she was fighting for 8 years with breast cancer, so it
Oh,
was not
wow.
sudden. But I was, a widower, and I didn't know right away
Right.
if I wanted to get remarried.
Right.
Um, and I have friends that are still in that position, and I know how hard families coming together, blended families, 2 different families together. There's so many.
Mhm.
That's a whole different portion. But to take on and getting married again requires a lot of compassion and love, and
Mhm.
a person who's willing to be there for someone else. I remember meeting my second wife on the shidduch. I said, I have one goal in mind: to make you the happiest wife that ever was in the world. And she
Wow.
bought it hook, line, and sinker. And thank God and I'm doing that. But then the goalposts keep moving. I've got to make you happier and happier. So in
Wow.
order to have that attitude, you have to open up your heart. And
That's so beautiful. That's really so beautiful. Did you ever think that you'd be like in this position? Did you ever dream that this is what you would be working
actually,
with?
Actually, no. I'm the baby of my family. I'm as I people would call me, say, I'm a spoiled brat, entitled to everything. My mother, brother, sister gave me everything. I came into Illinois as a underling to Rabbi Moskowitz. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And
Right.
and then again, my wife had to push me to go out of my comfort zone. No, you need to climb to the top. You need to become your own director. So for me, going from being a baby and someone who just tell me what to do, a soldier, to move up the ranks to become a general and a director, and to be having now, I think I probably have 5 to 10 people working under me, and having to get a payroll every month and doing all the fundraising and grow the organization. It's a whole new field. And I would say from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, each decade of my life has brought something new. So now I just hit the big 7-0. And I mean, Avram didn't start doing, 75 is when he got, you go, leave your home. Moshe didn't start till he was 80. So I'm just a kid still.
I'm wondering if you could give us some tips of how you acquired those skills and that momentum to keep on doing that, from this youngest, the baby in the family, to becoming this director, and to keep growing every decade.
Yeah, so I'll share a story with you. When I was a teenager in Morristown, the boys at night, aside from having for bringing the mashpia, the mentor from the yeshiva, getting everybody together and teaching them, and we would go off on our own and have these little private support group meetings, as it would say. And what a group of us found is that, you know what happens a lot of times is 3-4 guys start judging and pointing fingers at some other guy, and just the whole night go after him and make them feel bad. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So 3 of us got together and said, let's try something different. Let's sit in the room. Each 2 of us have to say what the best quality of the third person is. And then at the end of the night, we will walk away with 3 good qualities so we're going to praise each other instead of criticize each other. Right. And I'm not going to give you names or what the whole farbrengen was, but what I was tagged with was adaptability. That no matter what situation I'm in, I am adaptable. So I think, starting off, I adapted how to be from a Brighton Beach boy to a Lubavitch bacher, how to go from being a bacher. When I say a bacher, I'm a bacher's bacher. Right. There's a rumor going around that I'm a bacher living with a married woman. That's how bacher I am.
Right.
So
you're very young. You're very young in spirit, very young in heart.
Yes. So go for me to become married to a single, to become married was an adaptation. For me to then move it to a place all alone. I just thought about it. I'm 24 and my wife's just 23, and we come out to Chicago. There's nobody at Rabbi Moskowitz. There's a small community, and how did we build Chicago? Look what Chicago is. There's 50 Chabad houses now. There's education. How did all that happen? Rabbi Moskowitz was 21 when he came. I was 24 when I came. How did these kids build this whole thing up? It's mind-boggling. So, but it's by able to be adaptable. And then I had to become a father. And then I had to learn how to be a Zaidi. Then I had to learn how to, raise money, get my kids married off. I had to get a home. I have a son who went through a brain surgery. My son who got in touch with you, he has a miracle from the Rebbe. He had, thank God, a brain surgery, and thank God it was a whole, so to go through that experience, to go through a wife being diagnosed with breast cancer and then be with that for 7 or 8 years, then to go through having to become a widower and then having to get married a second time. These are all changes in life. And then together with that, I was growing as a human. Each experience, like we read about, olive oil, to get the best stuff out of oil, you crush it. So these are all things we go through life. So I think the attitude, my initials are BS, which don't sound very good all the time, but I always translate it as blessings and simcha, or bitachon and simcha. So I live my initials. I'm happy. I have trust in Hashem, and that everything is, there's not only good, hidden good and revealed good. And even in the hidden good, if we trust strong enough, it turns revealed. And I've seen that in my life. Thank God, 8 children. Thank God, all got married. Thank God, many grandchildren. Thank God, my children are doing the Rebbe's work. I have 4 sons. Could you imagine? All 4 of them are now prison chaplains. My
Unbelievable.
youngest son, who lives in Philadelphia, he was working at CTEEN, and then he asked me, "Oh, they called me from a prison in New Jersey. You think I should go in?" I said,
Mhm.
"First volunteer and see if it's for you." He went in, and he felt the same way I did, and now he got a full-time position as a full-time chaplain in a New Jersey prison. The Jewish chaplain. So 4
Following in your
sons.
footsteps. Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow. So is the secret to your adaptability that you adapt so easily the fact that you always look at the positive, that you're looking in the blessings, or is there some kind of Hasidic teaching or some kind of thing that you keep in mind?
I think every time I just look back to the Rebbe and
Mhm.
the Rebbe's teachings, and we know that many times as the Rebbe openly wept and cried by Farbrengens, it didn't stay there. It always had to be then, okay, we have to adapt to this situation. We've got to build, we've got to increase, we've got to spread light. So I think this is just what a chassid does. This is what the Rebbe does. What a event happened in the world. The Rebbe is coming out of the Holocaust, and he came
Mhm.
to a bunch of Holocaust survivors in Crown Heights, and he turned the whole place upside down. He said, "Come on,
Mhm.
boys, we gotta change the world." And
Mhm.
I think this is, just passed down from Rebbe to Chassid. And we now, especially after Gimel Thomas, we are acting everything we do. We are the Rebbe's. Now, another thing I do is after COVID, I used to go quite often to the Rebbe, but then when I couldn't go for a whole year by COVID, since then I made a resolution to not have a month go by that I don't visit the Rebbe.
The Rebbe's
So,
Isle,
so in the last 5 years, so that's
the
I've
Rebbe's
gone
resting
6.
place.
Yes, and
Mhm.
slash N770. I make my
Mhm.
way to the Rebbe's
The
resting
Rebbe's
place
shul.
by the Ohel. I go to his shul. I go to 770 once a month. And
Mhm.
another secret I have is that also once a month, I don't know how it came to be, but I became known as an individual that could sit down with 15 to 18 to 20-year-olds and sit the night with them and talk openly, talk vulnerably to them, and tell them all about life and about
Mhm.
being a chassid. And so at least once a month, I am with another group of young men of Bachram. So I
Is that
think
what keeps
sticking
you
with
so
Bachram, huh?
that keeps you so young?
I think it does.
And what message do you give them? What message do you want to give them?
The first thing, I give them the same message to the individuals I see. I find that there's a lot of young people that don't forgive themselves.
Mm,
They're not in prison, but they know they did things they shouldn't have done. And a
mm,
lot of people can't forgive themselves. And I
mm,
said, you cannot love anybody if you hate yourself.
mm,
I implore them to love themselves, to see
mm.
themselves as pot, to forgive themselves, because you're not going to love anybody else if you don't love yourself. And unfortunately, there's many sad stories of young people in Chabad all over the world, in the whole Jewish community, which they feel like they have to, life is too painful for them.
Right.
So
That-
I
What a
like to
what a
go.
beautiful message, especially for 15 to 18-year-olds. And incredible.
Right, and they love it. They
Yeah.
love it. And of course, I joke with them and I tell them prison stories, and I
Yeah.
I sing with them and I dance with them, and um,
Can you share with us another prison story?
yes, I will tell you the story of uh, this is not this is when you go to prison. There's yeah. This is a story I always tell the counselors when they come to camp. So I'm going to, if I could tell 2 stories. So when the
Sure.
counselors come to camp, I tell them the story of how um, I was going down to prison in these really clunkers, real donated cars. They didn't. It was always an adventure. So I started giving a class to a criminal attorney, a Jewish criminal attorney. Started learning some Hasidic philosophy together, and he said, "Hey, I'll drive you down in my car." But
Mm,
and this would be, we had to go to somebody that was 3-4 hours away. He said, but you have to stop at this one prison, a maximum security prison, Pontiac. I have a client there. If you agree to stop, I'll drive you. So I agreed with him. I said, yeah, by the way, there's a name on my list. This was back in the 80s. Couldn't Google everybody's name and see that picture. I just had a list of names. There was somebody, Jeffrey Jarvis. So Jeffrey, maybe he's Jewish. So I said, okay, you go see a client, and I'm waiting to see this man, Jeffrey. One after another, people are walking in, and a big black man walks towards me, and he said, I'm Jeffrey Jarvis. I said, you're Jeffrey Jarvis? You wrote down here you're Jewish. He said, well, actually, I'm Baptist, but I want to try it out. I said, what did you do to get here? He said, I'm not here for what I did. I'm here for what I have to do. That's what he told me. I said,
Wow.
what do you have to do? He says, I'm a prophet. I said, well, it's your lucky day. I told him the 7 laws of Noah, and I said, go spread this around. And I never saw Jeffrey Jarvis again. But on our traveling to the next prison, this lawyer said, well, you taught me that the Baal Shem Tov says everything we see and hear, you have to learn a lesson. What did you learn from this man that you saw? I say, I don't know. He said, tell me the story. He said, when he told you, I'm not here for what I did, I'm here for what I have to do. That was and there's talks of the Rebbe where he said people sometimes go to a town and they're a salesman and they're a computer operator. Sometimes they're even a rabbi. They're even, they do holy work. They're a teacher, but that's only, the Rebbe said, that's the outside. Then there's the inside of the fruit. There's always something deeper to do. You're not here for what I told the counselors. You thought you're coming here for camp, but maybe in between camp hours, you're going to be shopping. You'll meet somebody. You're not here for what you did. You're here for what you have to do. So in my prison visits, was a chaplain, a Lutheran chaplain who was very friendly to the Jewish people. And it was Hanukkah time. So I came down to the prison. And I have to tell you that this prison chaplain, a Lutheran minister, was a very, very large-sized man. And so I figured he would appreciate the recipe in the Hanukkah brochure for latkes. So I said, chaplain, here's a recipe for latkes. Eyes opened up. He said, latkes? My grandma used to make latkes. I said, but you're a Lutheran minister. Why did your grandma make latkes? He says, I don't know. I grew up in Peoria, Illinois. My father worked in the beer factory, and I once went to play taps on my bugle for a soldier in the Jewish cemetery. Why? I said, I don't know. I said, well, why don't you find out? Maybe there's something behind it. So I came to the prison next month. He said, okay, I spoke to one of my aunts, not a Jewish aunt. She said, okay, you're 48 years old. I guess we could break the news to you. You're Jewish.
Oh, wow.
And if you were going to have a bris, your name would have been Mordechai.
Wow.
And so now we had to verify this. So finally, the story was his father was a virulent anti-Semite, worked at Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, used to unfortunately come home drunk, beat this man's mother, warned her, if you ever tell the kids you're Jewish, I don't want to go further. Finally, he was able to get his mother alone when the father wasn't there. And she said, yes, my parents were from St. Louis. And I used to light candles with my mother on Friday night and put money in a place called Beis Sarah. I just recently saw a letter from the Rebbe from the 1940s where at that time, Merkis had opened up Beis Sarah and Beis Rivka schools. It was actually a Lubavitcher school, that's Pushka. And and then he actually contacted Rabbi David Rimler at Judaica World. He got tefillin, he got a tallis. He went full in. He took his Lutheran ordination. He sent it back to the Lutherans. The Oliphant Institute wrote him up a paper where, he could serve as a Jewish. He started wearing a yarmulke on the inside. His wife divorced him because it was just too much. Mezuzah on the door. And he eventually became the chief of all the chaplains in the state of Illinois. And Aleph Institute, about a decade ago, presented him with the chaplain of the United States for the work he did in Illinois prisons, making it possible Hanukkah menorahs and kosher and ladies lighting Shabbos candles. So this was a transformation of someone from a Lutheran minister. And 10 years ago, one of my grandsons, he lives in Southern Illinois near my son. So one of my grandsons got a bris. He came by to the bris, and the Moyel took him up into a bedroom, and he only had a circumcision. He completed what had to be done, and he took the name Mordechai Dov Ber.
Isn't that something? Wow.
And I'm still in touch with him. He's retired. And so, like, this is not, we're not here for what we did. For what we have to do. There's always something else that comes out of it.
That we have to do. Wow. Incredible. Right. Rabbi Scheiman, it was an incredible interview. Could you just leave us with one parting thought, or is there some message that you want to give to people who are listening to this?
Yes, definitely. I'd like people to know that everybody deserves a second chance. The people I see particularly are people in a correctional institution, but people who go through divorces, people go through bankruptcies, people who do embarrassing things, spouses between each other. People need to forgive each other, forgive themselves, and we have to give ourselves second chances, and whoever else we see in the world, look at their bright side, know they're humans, give them a second chance, especially the youth of today. The parents should have, and the administrators in the schools should really give a lot of space and understanding to the young people growing up today. Give them as many second chances as it takes, because they're really good. We're just in pain. We're in gullus and in exile, and soon that will come to an end. No more prisons. There won't be any more places to visit. I'll go back to my Kohen work.
Yeah, that's right.
The temple.
That's right. Wow, beautiful. I was going to say, what are your dreams for the future? But you just answered it already. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your inspiring words. Continued success in everything that you do.
Thank you, and continue these amazing your podcasts, and may you have success in everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, that was such an incredible interview with Rabbi Binyomin Scheiman. I was especially struck by his ability to adapt to all the different situations. He spoke about adapting as a young child to a Chabad lifestyle, to a religious lifestyle, to become a shliach, which in those days was a difficult thing. There were so few people. Illinois was such a desert. There were so few Jewish organizations there, and yet he adapted to that role. Then he had such difficult hardships in his life, his wife passing, 8 years of her suffering, and his child who had undergone also a health issue, all these things, and yet he adapted. And then he explained how the compassion that he got later on when he remarried, and he married his second wife, and then really undertook to grow his Hindu organization, his institute, and the power to adapt from just being a worker on a payroll to actually become the director and the boss who hired different people and who had the vision and the growth for the organization. That was really incredible. And I think the growth and this power of adapting came from his ability to always look in the positive. I loved how he said how everyone deserves a second chance, how God has forgiven you for what you've done, and how so many of us go around feeling like we are not forgivable, that things that we've done are something that we can never, ever make amends for, and that God will never forgive us for them. I love that he gives the same message to the boys in the yeshiva, the 15, 18-year-old boys, as he does to those in prison, and how that message can completely transform people. That message of you can go on and become better. You can change. There are second chances. And perhaps this is something that each of us can take home to ourselves and give ourselves that message in how we talk to ourselves, as well as in how we look at others around us. One last point that I also loved was that message of when you are somewhere, you're there for a reason. And that was so clear with the different stories that he told. When we're in a place, we're there to make a difference there. And whether it's a small difference or it's a big difference, and sometimes we don't even know the difference that we're there to do, but we're here for a purpose. And it's each and every one of us has only the unique gifts that we've been given to make that difference in our lives and in the lives of those around us. If you enjoy watching these interviews, I hope you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. You will get these interviews right into your inbox weekly. So please subscribe, and then you will get it automatically. You can also find us on all podcast platforms. We are on YouTube. You can like us there, subscribe there as well. We love to hear your comments. Drop us a line. Tell me, what did you get from this interview with Rabbi Scheiman? What point are you taking home from it? What surprised you? Were you surprised about prison life? Were you surprised about some of the things that Rabbi Scheiman spoke about? Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this extraordinary community.